And MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance. Joyce, your thoughts on these texts?
I think Joe just gave a pretty good closing argument for a criminal jury to hear in this case. These texts provide some of the pieces that we've been talking about over time. You've heard many of the legal analysts say that one of the most difficult challenges the Justice Department would face if it wanted to bring a prosecution is proving intent, proving that Donald Trump really knew that he had lost the election and that the big lie was just that, an effort to steal the election. So having this text from Trump Jr. that while the votes are still being counted, acknowledges the loss and then lays out a strategy, it's not just deeply offensive to the American people. And I worry that sometimes we get lost in all of the back and forth on this and don't take that moment to be offended that a sitting president thought it was legitimate to bypass the will of the American people and steal the election for his own. But this provides that key element of proof the government would need to go forward with a prosecution, that they knew they had lost the election, that they continued to engage in efforts to take it from Joe Biden nonetheless.
Joyce, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Joe just actually summed up the situation perfectly on a national basis here. People are tired of hearing about all of this. That's understandable. From your perspective as a former U.S. attorney, looking at what's happened in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office's investigation of Donald Trump, from the January 6th assemblage of evidence against Donald Trump, and from other investigations that are ongoing, as well as all of the anecdotal evidence we have, would you indict him?
The question of whether to indict has to be an evidence-specific case, and there are a lot of moving pieces. I have sympathy for what DOJ prosecutors are looking at. There are issues as varied as a First Amendment defense. For instance, whether or not the speech that was used on the ellipse is protected by the Constitution, and whether that could prevent a prosecution. That's just one of the many difficult issues prosecutors have to parse. The court of opinion, as you point out, is something entirely different, and there's a little bit of fatigue right now in the court of public opinion. But that's not how prosecutions work. If DOJ decides that the law and the evidence merits prosecution, then a jury will be assembled in a courtroom in the United States District Court in the District of Columbia. That jury will hear evidence, not this entire enormous mess that's really what I think has created fatigue in the public, but they'll hear very specific evidence on each of the elements of crimes that are charged, and they'll make a decision about whether anyone who is charged with those crimes is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Something that we've seen over and over in these cases, I remember the prosecution of Paul Manafort, is that citizens serving as jurors can set aside their preconceptions and their biases and hear that evidence and reach a ruling. So that's a very different sort of enterprise from the court of public opinion.
And Joyce, back to this just being offensive, perhaps even more offensive now. As we look through the lens of history, we watch Ukraine's struggle for survival with a leader that Donald Trump tried to shake down. I mean, the offense factor is way up.